Luther Vandross was a man of many mysteries. He serenaded the world with timeless love songs. Yet behind closed doors, his personal life was filled with unanswered questions. Did he ever find love? Was he truly happy? And what secrets did he keep hidden from the public eye? In this video, we dive deep into the life and legacy of the velvet-voiced icon. From his abandoned mansion to the truth about his sexuality, his staggering net worth, and the heartbreaking struggles that led to his untimely passing, we're uncovering it all. So, stay tuned. Early years. Luther Ronzoni Vandross Jr. was born on April 20th, 1951, in New York City, growing up in the Alfred E. Smith housing projects on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. His home was always filled with music. His mother, Mary Ida Vandross, worked as a nurse, while his father, Luther Vandross Sr., was an upholsterer who also had a passion for singing. From an early age, it was clear that Luther was musically gifted. By the time he was 3, he had already taught himself to play the piano by ear. His childhood was full of love and laughter, days spent at the beach, dancing around the living room, and making memories with his family. But in 1959, tragedy struck. After a family outing to the beach, his father suddenly passed away, leaving Luther, just 8 years old, to grapple with an overwhelming loss. Music became his refuge. In a 2002 interview, he reflected on the deep impact of his father's passing, saying, "I still carry that pain with me, and whenever I see the relationship between a father and son depicted on television or in a film, I am filled with sadness at what I have missed." Luther's family had deep musical roots. His father had been a singer, and his oldest sister, Patricia, had dreams of stardom, too. She was a member of the Crests, a doo-wop group made up of 4 young men from the neighborhood and herself. They were on the verge of success when they got an opportunity to go on a nationwide promotional tour. But when Patricia asked their mother for permission to travel with the group, Mary Ida said no. She wasn't comfortable with her teenage daughter hitting the road with 4 boys. With no choice but to stay home, Patricia watched from the sidelines as the Crests went on to release their first hit song just a year later. Inspirations. Luther's sisters, Patricia and Anne, often took him to the theater, where he was captivated by the likes of Dionne Warwick and Aretha Franklin. Watching these icons perform was a turning point for him. He had always loved music, but seeing them on stage, the effortless way the Temptations moved, the elegance of Diana Ross, the smooth, soulful delivery of Dionne Warwick, sparked something deeper. He knew he wanted to be just like them. Of all his influences, Dionne Warwick stood out the most. He was drawn to her voice, her grace, and the way she commanded the stage. As he got older, he studied her closely, along with artists like Diana Ross, soaking in every detail as he worked to shape his own unique style. Shades of Jade. By the time Luther reached high school, music was second nature to him. He formed a singing group called Shades of Jade with his classmates, including his best friend, Robin. The group gave him a creative outlet, but he also pushed himself to perform solo, even stepping onto the legendary Apollo Theater stage for amateur night multiple times, though he never won. But at 16, Luther was dealing with something even more personal. He was in love, and it wasn't returned. In Luther, The Life and Longing of Luther Vandross, author Craig Seymour shares Luther's heartbreaking recollection. "The person was almost like, 'Thank you, but I'm not interested.' It was very painful and unrequited and alienating, very alienating." Luther never revealed who it was, but the sting of rejection stayed with him. To cope, he turned to food. "The first thing I would do if I was depressed or rejected or whatever is eat," he admitted. Heartbroken or not, Luther refused to let anything stand in the way of his dreams. Shades of Jade was selected to be part of Listen, My Brother, the Apollo Theater's youth performance group. Made up of over 10 singers, the group was filled with talented voices, but Luther's stood out. His silky, smooth tone was unmistakable. Then, in August 1969, after performing at the Harlem Cultural Festival, listen, my brother got an unexpected opportunity. They were invited to appear on the pilot episode of a brand new children's show, one that would go on to become a cultural phenomenon. That show? Sesame Street. By the time he turned 18, despite all his success, Luther had yet to experience love for himself. In a 1990 interview, he reflected on why romance had always seemed to pass him by. Maybe that's why, when everyone was forming couples and falling in love, when romance was all around me, I missed out. I was distracted. My life was in the headphones. It might have been lonely in there, but I had no choice. By then, music was an obsession. It still is. But it wasn't just music that kept him busy. While attending William Howard Taft High School in the Bronx, Luther founded the first-ever Patti LaBelle fan club. As the self-appointed president, he took the role very seriously, so seriously, in fact, that it caught Patti LaBelle's attention, leading to a lifelong friendship between them. A Broadway breakthrough. After high school and a short time at Western Michigan University, Luther made a bold decision. He was going to pursue music full-time. He kept in touch with his Listen, My Brother peers and hustled his way into industry connections, all while working at a store in the city to make ends meet. Then an incredible opportunity knocked. Ken Harper, a former radio DJ, was producing an all-black version of The Wizard of Oz for Broadway. At the time, the show had a working title, The Wiz, and it needed songs. Luther sent him everything he had. His upbeat composition, Everybody Rejoice, A Brand New Day, made the cut, and just like that, Luther Vandross had his first Broadway credit. Bowie. Luther's big break came thanks to a chance connection. His close friend Robin had married a guitarist, working with David Bowie, and one day she invited Luther to a listening session at Bowie's studio. As they played a rough cut of Young Americans, Luther, never one to hold back, had a few suggestions. Bowie was so impressed that he brought him on board, not just as a background vocalist, but also to help with vocal arrangements and melodies for the album. One of Luther's own songs, Funky Music, ended up being reworked into Fascination, a track that made it onto Young Americans. Before long, Luther was touring with Bowie as a background singer, and eventually he was promoted to an opening act on the 1974 Diamond Dogs tour. As Luther's career gained momentum, The Wiz opened on Broadway on January 5, 1975, and just 2 months later, Young Americans hit the shelves, becoming Bowie's biggest-selling album in the U.S. After finishing Bowie's tour, Luther landed another major gig, this time with Bette Midler. He worked on arranging her new live show and sang backup vocals during her performances, but there was a catch. Midler's backing singers, known as the Harlots, were typically slim women in flashy outfits. Luther was neither. So, instead of standing on stage, he was tucked behind the curtain, harmonizing from the shadows. But Luther wasn't content with just being heard. He wanted to be seen. Still battling self-doubt about whether he could succeed as a solo artist, he decided to form his own group, simply called Luther. The co-ed lineup included former Shades of Jade members Anthony Hinton and Diane Suler, along with Teresa V. Reed and Christine Wiltshire. While they released a few singles that gained some traction, none made a real impact on the charts. To make ends meet, Luther turned to another skill, writing commercial jingles. His smooth, unmistakable voice became a go-to in the advertising world, earning him big paychecks while he worked toward his dream. At the same time, he continued singing background vocals for major artists, including Chaka Khan, Roberta Flack, and even his ultimate idol, Diana Ross. By the late 1970s, Luther was pulling in over $600,000 a year, but despite the success behind the scenes, his real goal, becoming a star in his own right, still felt just out of reach. By 1980, Luther the group had run its course, but Luther himself was far from done. His work had caught the attention of Jacques-Fred Petrus, a French-Italian producer and businessman who had just formed the pop dance group Change. Petrus wanted Luther to be a featured vocalist, and the collaboration proved to be a game-changer. With Luther on lead vocals, Change released 2 singles, Searching and The Glow of Love. Both tracks soared to #1 on the U.S. dance charts, introducing Luther's smooth, soulful voice to an even wider audience. Petrus wanted Luther to return for another project, but there was a problem. The pay wasn't right. Unwilling to settle, Luther walked away, but the risk paid off. That same year, Epic Records came calling, offering Luther a solo record deal, the moment he had been working toward for years. Never Too Much, the breakthrough. Luther's solo career officially took off in 1981 with the release of his debut album, Never Too Much. The title track, written and produced by Luther himself, became an instant classic, shooting to #1 on the R&B charts and proving that he wasn't just a background singer or songwriter, he was a star. But the album wasn't a one-hit wonder. Songs like Don't You Know That and his emotional take on A House Is Not a Home showcased his vocal mastery and signature blend of passion and precision. From there, Luther kept the momentum going. His sophomore album, Forever for Always for Love, dropped in 1982, delivering more hits like Bad Boy, Having a Party, and Since I Lost My Baby. The album was another platinum success, cementing Luther's place as one of the most beloved voices in R&B. By that point, he was no longer just a rising star. He was a household name. He even earned his first Grammy nomination in 1982. Though he lost to James Ingram, the industry had taken notice. That same year, Luther got the chance to work with one of his idols, Aretha Franklin. Producing her 1982 album, Jump to It, was a full-circle moment for him. The title track became Aretha's first top 40 pop hit in 6 years, and the album went gold. The Rift with Aretha. But the honeymoon phase didn't last. When it came time to record Aretha's 1983 follow-up album, Luther, ever the perfectionist, offered her notes on her singing. That didn't sit well with the Queen of Soul. After all, she was Aretha Franklin. Who was he to give her advice? The tension escalated into a full-blown argument. Frustrated, Aretha stormed out of the New York recording session, got on her tour bus, and drove all the way back to Detroit. With Aretha gone and the album in limbo, Clive Davis kept calling Luther, demanding updates. But Luther had nothing to tell him. It took Cissy Houston, Whitney Houston's mother, to step in and mediate. Thanks to her intervention, Luther and Aretha patched things up and finished the Get It Right album later that year. Despite the drama, it was another success for Aretha, Luther's rising star. Meanwhile, Luther's own career was on fire. His 1983 album, Busybody, was a hit, featuring the smash single Superstar and the heartfelt duet How Many Times Can We Say Goodbye with Dionne Warwick, one of his biggest inspirations. Luther had admired Dionne since he was a teenager, and in an interview he recalled the exact moment he knew he wanted to be a singer. "I was sitting in the theater, and this girl singer came on in a red dress, okay? She sang, 'Don't Make Me Over and Walk On By.' And I can tell you specifically that right at that moment, I knew I wanted to be able to affect people the way she had affected me. And that, of course, turned out to be Dionne. That childhood admiration turned into a lifelong friendship between the two." In 1985, while watching Star Search, Luther came across a 14-year-old singer named Jimmy Salvemini. The kid had a voice like silk, and Luther saw something special in him. Wanting to help, Luther reached out to Jimmy and his older brother manager, Larry Salvemini. He flew them to Los Angeles, helped them land a $250,000 deal with Elektra Records, and agreed to produce Jimmy's debut album. Weight and Rumors. Despite his success, Luther Vandross faced his share of personal and professional struggles. His lifelong battle with weight gain and health issues was something he wrestled with for years. The pain of losing his drummer, Yogi Horton, in 1987 only made things worse. Horton's death by suicide shook Luther deeply, and in his grief, he gained 120 pounds. Fans who had admired his slimmed-down look in his MTV music videos were surprised when they saw him in person. He looked noticeably different. But even with these challenges, Luther was a superstar. Some might even say a diva. And like many divas of the time, he had his fair share of battles. One of the biggest controversies came in 1985, when the British music magazine Blues and Soul falsely printed that he was suffering from AIDS. The rumor spread quickly, and Luther, furious at the baseless claim, threatened to sue. He made the rounds in the media to clear his name, denying the story outright. But the damage had already been done. The speculation about his health only fueled even more curiosity about his personal life, especially his love life. Adding to the whispers was Luther's dramatic weight loss during this time, but it wasn't due to illness. It was because of love. Luther had met someone, and he wanted to look good for his new partner. Who was this person? We'll never know. Luther was famously private when it came to his relationships. He was never seen publicly with a romantic partner, never spoke about them, and never revealed whether he was dating a man or a woman. Was Luther Vandross gay? During Luther Vandross's prime, speculation about his personal life, particularly his sexuality, was constant. He was never publicly linked to women, yet the deep emotion in his music had fans wondering if his love songs were inspired by something different than they imagined. The truth. Luther was gay, but he never publicly acknowledged it during his lifetime. According to close friends, including Patti LaBelle, he feared that coming out would destroy his career, and he had good reason to worry. At the time, being openly gay in the music industry, especially as a black male artist, was nearly unheard of. The backlash could have been career-ending, as both the industry and society often forced artists to hide their true selves to maintain mainstream success. Luther had an enormous fan base, especially among women, who adored his smooth voice and romantic lyrics. There was a real concern that if he publicly came out, some fans might not see him the same way, that he would no longer be perceived as the dream man they imagined through his songs. Looking back now, in a time when the world is more accepting, it's heartbreaking to think that Luther may have felt trapped, afraid that being his authentic self would cost him everything he had worked for. Knowing what we do now, his love songs take on a deeper, more poignant meaning, a voice full of passion, longing, and perhaps a love that he never felt free to express openly. Was Luther Vandross married, and did he have children? Despite his legendary career, Luther Vandross never married or had children. Sadly, he outlived all of his older siblings, leaving his mother to endure the unimaginable pain of burying each of her children. Though Luther never publicly discussed his sexuality, close friends and industry insiders have since acknowledged that he was gay. One particularly interesting insight comes from Lenny Kravitz, who once lived with David Bowie. Lenny recalled overhearing late-night phone conversations between Luther and Bowie, sometimes on speakerphone, offering a rare glimpse into Luther's personal life. In a private moment of honesty, Luther once admitted that while he appreciated the adoration of his female fans, his heart was drawn to men. Lenny, a close friend, understood the loneliness Luther felt, unable to fully be himself in public or within the industry. Luther's decision to keep this part of his life private wasn't just about personal preference. It was about protecting his career and avoiding disappointment from those who idolized him. At the time, the pressure to conform to expectations, especially as a beloved black male artist, was overwhelming. The weight of that secrecy must have been incredibly isolating, adding another layer of struggle to his already complex journey. Why his gender is his biggest secret. The topic of outing is a sensitive and complicated issue within the LGBTQ+ community. Throughout history, publicly revealing one's sexual or gender identity, even by choice, has carried serious risks in a world where LGBTQ+ people have often faced discrimination, ridicule, and even violence. Despite the progress in civil rights and societal acceptance, coming out is still a deeply personal and courageous act, especially for Black LGBTQ+ individuals who must navigate both racism and homophobia. The potential backlash can make openness feel dangerous, particularly in industries and communities where acceptance is still conditional. For Luther Vandross, the thought of coming out as a gay Black man at the height of his career in the 1980s must have been daunting. As an R&B sex symbol, adored by female fans and deeply connected to Black culture, where church traditions and ideas of masculinity often reinforced homophobia, the risks of being openly gay were immeasurable. Even if he had wanted to live openly, there was no clear precedent that could assure him he would still be embraced. While the pop world had openly queer stars like Boy George and Elton John, the R&B genre, with its roots in Black identity and church-based traditions, was far less forgiving. Luther would have had to navigate uncharted territory, confronting both racism and homophobia at once. That's an enormous burden for any artist to carry alone. At the time, male artists were expected to be romantic fantasies for female audiences, and for someone like Luther, whose voice made women swoon, being openly gay could have jeopardized his entire public image and commercial success. It wasn't that Luther actively cared about speculation. He simply refused to confirm or deny anything, choosing to keep that part of his life private. In an era when the industry and society were far less accepting, staying silent may have been his way of protecting his career, his legacy, and his own peace of mind. Luther Vandross's decision to keep his personal life private fueled years of speculation, including cruel and unfounded rumors, one of which falsely claimed he had contracted AIDS. The gossip reached a disturbing peak in 2000 when a hoax report circulated, falsely claiming he had died from the disease. In an era when discussing LGBTQ+ identity was still risky, coming out likely felt neither safe nor worth the potential fallout. Like any Black gay man, whether open about his identity or not, Luther simply wanted love and happiness. In an interview with Vibe, he made a heartbreaking admission. He had never experienced love that was reciprocated. "I'm still waiting," he confessed. Luther had struggled with unrequited love since he was 16, a pain he described as deeply isolating. It was a painful irony that the man whose voice defined romance for generations had not found his own great love story. Whether that changed before his passing remains a mystery. His lifelong struggle to be his authentic self in a society and industry shaped by bigotry and expectations serves as a reminder of the hardships LGBTQ+ individuals face, even those in the spotlight. By 2017, representation for LGBTQ+ people in media had improved, yet mainstream R&B still lacked openly gay Black male artists. Frank Ocean remains one of the few exceptions, highlighting how much progress is still needed. To this day, some debate whether Patti LaBelle should have publicly confirmed Luther's sexuality. But at its core, this isn't about whether someone should have spoken for him. It's about an industry and society that made it nearly impossible for him to live openly and without fear. Luther Vandross may have lived 54 years, but the real tragedy is that he never felt free enough to fully embrace and celebrate his true self. Beyond the emotional struggles, his declining health also took a devastating toll. In 2003, Luther suffered a stroke while battling diabetes and hypertension. Though he was rushed to the hospital, the aftermath left him in a months-long coma, unable to speak or walk, which effectively ended his singing career. After 2 difficult years, Luther Vandross passed away in 2005 at the age of 54. He was hospitalized at JFK Medical Center, where he ultimately suffered a fatal heart attack. Though his declining health was well known, his passing still came as a shock, sending ripples of grief through the music world. The loss of such an immensely talented and deeply beloved artist was nothing short of heartbreaking. Who sang at Luther's funeral? The legendary Luther Vandross battled diabetes and hypertension for much of his adult life, but in 2003, his health took a devastating turn. He suffered a severe stroke that left him in a coma for 2 months. Though he eventually regained consciousness, the effects were profound. He lost his ability to speak, walk, and sing, altering his life and career forever. As his health declined, Luther stepped away from the public eye, making his final appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2004. Sadly, in 2005, he suffered a fatal heart attack, bringing an end to the life of one of music's most beloved voices. On July 8, 2005, family, friends, and fans gathered at Riverside Church in New York City to honor him. Among the tributes was a deeply moving performance by Cissy Houston, Whitney Houston's mother, as she paid her respects to the legendary artist. Luther Vandross's net worth. At the time of his passing in 2005, Luther Vandross had amassed a net worth of $40 million. Known as the Velvet Voice, he first made a name for himself as a highly sought-after background vocalist, lending his smooth, soulful sound to legends like David Bowie, Donna Summer, and Diana Ross. Luther's talents extended far beyond background singing. In the 1980s, he became the lead vocalist for the group Change, earning commercial success before launching a phenomenal solo career. With hit songs and unforgettable duets, he cemented his place as an R&B powerhouse. Before his untimely death, Luther had sold over 35 million records worldwide, achieving both critical acclaim and commercial success. His impact was recognized with 8 Grammy Awards, including 4 wins for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance. In 2004, he had one of the most defining moments of his career, winning 4 Grammys, including Song of the Year for his deeply personal ballad, Dance with My Father. Sadly, he passed away not long after the song's release, making it a bittersweet farewell to his fans. Even after his passing, Luther Vandross remains one of the greatest vocalists in music history. His legacy lives on through his timeless music and the lasting impact he left on the industry and his devoted fans. Real estate. In 2003, Luther Vandross made headlines for selling off several of his properties, including a 7-room condo in Manhattan that he sold for $4.42 million. He had originally purchased the 3,200-square-foot unit in 1999 for $3.8 million. The condo was located in a luxury building renovated by Donald Trump in 1998, with the prestigious 4-star Daniel restaurant on the ground floor. This wasn't his only notable real estate move. In 1998, Vandross sold another Manhattan condo for $5.6 million. A few years later, in 2002, he parted with an Upper East Side condo for just over $400,000, and that same year, he sold a Stamford, Connecticut property for $850,000. One of his most impressive sales came in 1999, when he sold his 23,000-square-foot estate in 1999 Connecticut for $10.75 million after purchasing it for $8.8 million in 1997. Years later, in 2015, reports surfaced that the sprawling mansion, situated on nearly 15 acres just outside Greenwich, was back on the market for just under $9 million. Among the many stories about his lavish lifestyle, one rumor stood out. Luther allegedly transformed a 3rd-floor indoor basketball court into an enormous walk-in closet. His real estate dealings not only reflected his success, but also offered a glimpse into the luxurious homes he once lived in. Did he murder someone? Luther Vandross was charged with misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter and reckless driving on Wednesday in connection to a multi-car crash that tragically left one person dead. At the time, VANDROSS was 34 years old and had recently been nominated for a Grammy Award. He was ordered to surrender on February 12th for arraignment in municipal court, according to the city attorney's office. If convicted on both charges, he faced up to 18 months in county jail and a $1,000 fine. City attorney spokesman Mike Qualls relayed that prosecutor Martin Ranard described VANDROSS as driving at an excessive speed along the winding Laurel Canyon Boulevard on January 12th. He reportedly lost control of his 1985 Mercedes-Benz, causing it to veer across the center line and crash into two oncoming vehicles. The accident claimed the life of 27-year-old Lawrence Salvini, a West Hollywood recording studio employee who was a passenger in VANDROSS's car. The singer was en route to the studio at the time of the crash. VANDROSS himself sustained broken ribs, head, and facial injuries, and was hospitalized at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in fair but stable condition for nearly a week. Other passengers were also injured, including Salvini's 15-year-old brother, who was also in VANDROSS's car, as well as 3 people, 2 women and a man, in the other vehicles involved in the collision. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you in the next one.